above and beyond and shining bright from afar like North Star. Guided me to Gibson, the manger, Dr. Stranger, like Blase Blah bringing danger. In Phantos of Harmonico sick, stand tall, surfing ink from Bic, push the click, now I'm running, leading down the L-pen shaft, and spin a phonograph to exercise a paragraph, epitaph, from killing off the flesh with 808, a low frequency to give you something to hate. We tie words uptight with lasso, with art from the soul, Pablo Picasso, and paintbrush in my discussion when we touching time sublime with rap flow. We tie words uptight with lasso.
Hey guys, we're back, NBA Weekly here, and I have my second caller, my special guest of the show. His name is Sam Rosen from Standing Situation, talking to us about the top three teams from each conference, who's going to the finals, and who's winning it. So, without further ado, Sam Rosen, you're on the show. Welcome.
How's it going, Steven? It's great to be here.
It's going pretty good. Long day in practice, but I'm great. I'm just really happy to get back on the show. So, Sam, obviously, we're going to be talking about what to expect from the Eastern and Western Conference. The Eastern Conference, obviously, one of the weaker conferences out of the two in the NBA. So, just pretty much going right to the point. Give me your top three for the Eastern Conference.
Okay, in the Eastern Conference, I really believe there are two established teams, even though one of them out of those two established teams might not be known as well as one of the top tier teams in the league. Their roster level does speak volumes about them. But I'm going to first start off with a little bit with my kind of wild card pick here right now, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. After going out and getting one of the most controversial players in the NBA, Andrew Bynum, obviously probably the second most talented center behind the guy who replaced him in LA, and that's Dwight Howard. This could be a very dynamic roster. Obviously, you have Bynum at the center. Evan Turner and Drew Holiday are the two keys here for me. Both are entering prime years in their career, and if one of them can develop into the players, I think they could be. Evan Turner, I think, could be a great scorer off the wing. And Drew Holiday, I remember watching him in college and thinking if he can ever get it all together, it's going to be special. So one of those two players, if they can really step it up and become a second leader on this team with Bynum, that's a huge key to this team. Also, they bring back Thaddeus Young, a really good, solid player. And now it's shooting guard instead of having Lou Williams from last year, who was probably more solid than these two next players I'm going to list off, but did not score, probably not as well. And these two players are Jason Richardson and Nick Young, who bring much-needed scoring punch to this team. So I don't think it's out of the question that this team can make a deep playoff run, so I say they take the 3 spot. In my number 2 spot, like I said, not as well known as an elite team, but I think this year they will become one with the absence of Derrick Rose, and that's the Indiana Pacers. You want to talk about a solid team, a team that's building off young talent and doing it well, and that's Indiana. Everything in Indiana starts with the guy who's been there the longest, and that's Danny Granger. Danny Granger is a great, consistent scorer who's going to give you his all every night in, and he's really going to set things up for this team. He's done it for the last 5 years now, and he's been the key guy. If he can perform at the level we all know he can, this team looks to be very good. Bringing back Roy Hibbert on that huge max contract was a big deal. If he can perform to the level he's supposed to, then with him and Granger, there's not going to be too many teams with a better 1-2 punch than that. Obviously, David West and Tyler Hansbrough at the 4 should be a very solid combination there. Both very good players. Hansbrough, the hustle guy, and David West, a very, very good player. Obviously signed to a big contract year before last and performed pretty well. Paul George is a very intriguing player, had a great season last year and looks to build on that. And then after getting rid of their 2 good point guards last year, one point guard, now they have George Hill to man the point. I really liked Hill during his tenure in San Antonio, and I liked him here last year. So all in all, this looks to be a very solid team. And with the lack of depth...
Sam, can I interrupt? Say I can interrupt you for a second. You're talking about how Danny Granger is going to make an impact. I know he's one of the best players that the Pacers have had in recent decades, but this just came out today. He is injured. He's
Oh,
sidelined
really?
indefinitely with a sore left knee. I'll get to that later, but I was just pointing that out and continue with your number ones. I know it's going to be the Heat.
Oh, it's obviously going to be the Heat. But let me just remark on that Danny Granger injury. If it's serious, that I don't know if it'll be detrimental to their playoff hopes, but there's no way they're going to be a 2 seed in the East. He's too big of a part, but I almost assume it's not going to be too huge. It says on the latest update on ESPN that let's see here, that Danny Granger has a left knee problem out indefinitely. I'm hoping for their sake it's not too long. So they get him back to see in the East. Obviously, the Miami Heat, we can go on and on about them. I'm not going to mention the big three there. I'm going to more focus on the guys who are new there. Ray Allen, I think, is a great addition to that team. He brings depth that they've never really had since the big three have gotten there. And then at point guard, I really like Mario Chalmers this year. I think he really developed in the playoffs last year, and I look for him to get even better. Rashard Lewis should give them some much-needed depth at the three. So, all in all, there's no other team really in the East, and probably in the NBA who's as good as them.
I agree with you with the first two. Obviously, the Heat. No, I don't really have to say anything about the Heat. Y'all, everybody knows they're good. The Pacers, that's a good choice for number two. I think that they're getting obviously Granger's injury is going to hurt them in the beginning of the season. But obviously, you're talking about Roy Hibbert becoming one of the even though he's still young, but he's becoming one of the most talented um, centers in the game. And then my number three is actually going to be the revamped, new logo, new arena, the Brooklyn Nets. I think that their starting lineup has been officially completed. I think that getting back Darren Williams, swooping in to Atlanta, getting Joe Johnson, and then with the return of Brooke Lopez from his broken foot injury he had last season, this team is ready to go and do something big. I think that Jay Z, the part owner of the Nets, I think he's expecting a lot out of this team. And also the bench has been revamped. Uh, Mirza Teletov from Spain. He went undrafted in 2007. He's been playing in Europe for a little while. We got the Nets got him. He's going to be a good. He's going to be an impact player off the bench. Also, Josh Childress. They also got him from the trade they had with Atlanta. So those are my top three. And let's go to the Western Conference. Your top three.
Just quickly before I start on that, on the Nets, quickly, I'd say they're a top two team actually in the East. If Gerald Wallace, who is probably their best defensive player, can stay healthy, but I've never really seen that happen, so that's why I have them out of my top three. In the West, there's one team obviously that's going to reign supreme, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers. I'll get to them in a second. But my 2 and 3 teams, one of them probably wouldn't have been a surprise earlier on this week. Now it is. The other one, maybe a little fringy, and that is the Denver Nuggets. Last year, they
Nuggets are
number
Nuggets are number two, number three. I'm sorry.
number 3. Sorry.
That's right.
Okay. Right. In number 3, I have the Nuggets. This is a team that last year started out really hot, cooled off a little bit, but still looked really strong. And with the addition of Andre Iguodala, I'm going to proclaim that this team is probably about the deepest team in the league. You look at them all the way around the board. Last season started the season off with the at center. Now they have JaVale McGee, who, if he can keep his head together and play like he did towards the end of last season with the Nuggets, could develop into a top 5 center, really. At power forward, Kenneth Faried is one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA. He plays so hard. He's really a glue guy for an NBA team like this one. Like I said, Andre Iguodala is a big acquisition for this team because he gives them really just a more dynamic fourth quarter threat. They didn't really have that last year. the guy who led them most of last year, Ty Lawson, is obviously back at the point. He's got help now with Andre Miller backing him up. Andre Miller is, and always has been in his tenure in the NBA, one of the better scoring point guards in the NBA. It'll be really interesting to see if they can manage the backcourt with Lawson and Miller in it. I don't know if that'll work. Miller's never been great at the two. And then at small forward, they have great depth with Danilo Gallinari and Wilson Chandler, both really good scorers. Gallinari is my key to this team. At points during last season, he was injured a little bit. He looks like one of the better scoring threes in the NBA. If he can get back to that performance, we could see big things from this team. And really, this is a team I think could even be it could be anywhere from 2 to 6. It could fall that far. Some of these guys they have now do not work out. At number 2, they just lost their third guy of their big three, James Harden. Obviously, a huge trade. Don't need to get into the specifics right now. But as is, this is still a very, very talented Thunder team, obviously led by Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. But people forget some of the other pieces this team has. Serge Ibaka is a just monster under the glass, and I think he's going to get a little better in his offensive game. Still a little raw. Has some area to improve, but he will get better there. Kendrick Perkins at center. Kendrick Perkins has been a little bit of a disappointment, but should still be a very productive actually, center for this team, probably somewhere in the top 15 in all centers, maybe even top 10. Shooting guard is a key position for me on this team. Without James Harden, Pablo Cephalosha will be required to play more minutes. He's a great defensive two, maybe one of the best in the NBA, but isn't a great offensive player, so maybe he might need to step that up. But when he's not on the court, they have basically the polar opposite of him in Kevin Martin, who's a great shooting two and one of the best scoring ones, scored over 20 points multiple times in his career, over 20 points per game multiple times in his career. So, all in all, I forgot about Eric Maynor and Reggie Jackson behind Westbrook at the point. They get Maynor back from injury. That's a big deal for this team. And Reggie Jackson looked very solid in backup of Russell Westbrook with Maynor down. So, looking at this team in retrospect after the Harden deal, they're not as solid. They don't have their Manu Ginobili type player coming off the bench now, but still a top tier team in the West. Should finish in a top 4 seed unless somehow the James Harden trade affects them more than we think it should. But I'd say 1 or 2 or 3 is very reasonable for this team. And last but not least, the Los Angeles Lakers. Once again, I've spoken on them many times on my show and on other shows. I've actually picked them above the Thunder to start off the NBA season. So, you look at this team, and the difference between last year and this year is the chemistry, in my opinion. When you have Steve Nash running the point, and you get Andrew Bynum off your team, who can be very cancerous at times, it's a big deal for that. I also like that position of Jody Meeks to back up Coach Bryant. It's a big deal because they did not have really any guard backup depth last season. So, all in all, the Lakers will head this division.
I like your that was pretty good input on the Thunder. Obviously James Harden going to the Rockets, but I think that the Rockets I think their roster obviously improves. I think the Harden will have to start now, especially since the Rockets did have to trade probably their best player before Jeremy Lin came. And I think this is a waste of a trade. Kevin Martin was a good player. They traded Kevin Martin, a few other guys for James Harden, and one other guy. And I think that they got the bad end of the deal. Jeremy Lin is not himself right now in Houston. And I think that Houston, I think their grade, their overall grade, it goes up a little bit, but it's not going to really affect their outcome if they make the playoffs or not. Obviously, Lakers number 1. in my opinion. Thunder go down number 3, in my opinion. And then for number 2, I'm gonna go with the Clippers. I think that